Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly. I mentioned way back that I wanted to do a few reviews from time to time of the weapons that really make a difference in my playing of Destiny 2. I will warn ahead of time, I'm a bit unorthodox in my weapon reviews because I go by feeling more than I do by numbers and stats. I'm also going to be deviating from the norm and adding in the history or lore of the weapon since that's primarily what we do here, but let's get to talking about the old-fashioned and how it handles in most aspects of Destiny 2. As a side note, prepare for long clips of gameplay because YouTube's anti-montage policy is pretty craptacular. The old-fashioned is a kinetic slot hand cannon. It has a very old-timey look that starts off rusted and old and then seemingly goes away because you know you're going to shade the crap out of the thing. I have mine shaded to Midnight Talons currently with a legendary weapon mod on it as well. You have 3 sight options, but I tend to focus pretty heavily on stability to get to that next shot pretty quickly, so Fast Draw HCS fits the bill for me. I also prefer accurized rounds over drop mag, but I've been playing off and on with both of them, finding I like drop mag and Crucible a bit more. I mean, faster reload, that's hard to beat in some cases. But what really makes the old-fashioned stand out is kill clip. I wish the perk would last a little longer to be more relevant in PvP, but in PvE and at times with Crucible, it really starts to show how awesome this revolver is. Bullet damage really spikes, and even at range, bullet drop-off doesn't feel to affect the gun too often with kill clip activated. Most targets die in 1 or 2 shots at most, especially going against Dregs, Vandals, Scions, and several other low-health enemies, while in Crucible, a few shots to the head or body are enough to drop a target. Personally, where I love the old-fashioned the most is in its aim assist, because I know right now I can't aim worth jack. This is the thing about me and any of the footage you might see from me, because I hope you don't view one of my reviews for the gameplay. What I do think it spans to show, however, is in the hands of a 2-bit pleb like myself who barely gets to play this game, you, the skilled marksman, would make mincemeat of your targets with this weapon. As for pairings, I've been going between a couple auto rifles, namely Uriel's Gift, to add a bit more range to my kit, but I'm not a huge fan of scout rifles right now to really comment on how well they would pair. It also doesn't help that the scouts I do like to use are all kinetic slot weapons, namely Mida, Call to Arms, and Nameless Midnight. I've heard good things of 7.65, but haven't really gotten one to play around with yet, unfortunately. As someone that's more of an auditory person though, where this gun really makes me perk up is the sound. The sound is so incredibly unique of Destiny, and it makes me wish we had more unique sounding weapons in-game. Firing a revolver a few times myself, it does sound like some of the old Civil War era guns that I've fired, and being the time that this weapon seems to be modeled after, that makes a lot of sense. But we'll get there in a second. The only other big things I need to really say about this gun, without really, again, going into heavy detail, is that it's very flexible. I used to use a lot of hand cannons in vanilla Destiny, and to use them a lot again in the state they're in now in Destiny 2 just feels right somehow. I also had a chance to use it in the raid, and it was easy to clear enemies and keep moving. It's a fun gun to use, pleasing to the ears, and definitely gives me that old cowboy feel. I just wish I could fan the hammer sometimes. But I couldn't shoot last word anyway, so what does it matter? Anyway, that ends my very short review of the gun, but now for the history lesson, which is, well, more my speed, let's face it. The old-fashioned is based on a design by both Samuel Colt and Smith & Wesson. Both parties focused on firearms in the mid-1800s, and both made some incredible strides in the creation of weapons technology. Sam Colt is widely accredited with the development of the revolver, saying he was inspired by the capstan of a ship. The idea of gears and barrels moving around in a cylinder was what made him think of moving bullets around in a cylinder as well. See, this was the 1800s. This was a time when semi-automatic weapons were a pipe dream. Heck, having more than one round in a barrel was a pipe dream. Early concepts of multi-shooting weapons tended to just add more barrels, filling them up with raw gunpowder, a bullet, a blasting cap. There were simply tons of items that you needed to take with you when you held a musket in the 1800s. And to get all the motions right while under pressure of being shot at was just icing on the cake. There were several steps involved in loading a weapon from this time, but the revolver at least allowed for 6 shots to be fired before needing to be reloaded. I'm going to keep the major gun talk out of this, but rifling was something that made a revolver sought after in the early days of development. Rifling allows for a bullet to fly more straight, and just like throwing a football, for instance, where you want the ball to spin to fly relatively straight and true, you want the same of a bullet from the barrel of a gun. This allowed not only for shots to be fired at a better pace, but also to be fired more accurately. This was a major step in the 1800s for weapons technology. Along with the cartridge, or what you might mistaken as a modern-day bullet, the loading of a revolver really did become one of the main focal points of the weapon. There were two main ways to load a revolver in the later 1800s, one way being a side cylinder that popped out from the side of the gun, where you had to then load one cartridge at a time, or another popular method being what the old-fashioned fits to. Enter the Smith & Wesson Model 3. This weapon popped open from the top, ejecting its cartridges without the need of manually pushing them out from the loading bay, kind of like what you would have to eject rounds from a side-loaded revolver. This really sped up reload times for top-load revolvers, but it came at a price. These weapons were usually more fragile and less stable than their side-loaded counterparts. The top-loaded revolvers saw fair use until Colt released their figurative swan song, the Single Action Army, or the Peacemaker. The Peacemaker went on to become one of the most used handguns in the United States, bringing that old cowboy flair that we know oh so well with 6 rounds of fire. Sadly, the Model 3 just didn't last the test of time, with frames and cartridge holdings seeming to degrade faster than expected. There are a few new weapons that have been modeled from the Model 3 over the last several years, but mostly as a nostalgia piece, with new attempts following suit of older guns made just like them. That about sums up the old-fashioned as best as I can without really getting technical. Trust me, I really would love to, but these videos are meant to be short and for fun. If you're interested in looking more into these weapons, there's plenty of knowledge out there on the internet, along with reenactment firings up here on YouTube. I've always been a fan of seeing a Civil War musket be loaded, but that's just me. Harkens back to an old-fashioned time when 3 rounds a minute was pretty fast. If you enjoyed this different take on the old-fashioned or this style of review, let me know in the comments below or with the like or dislike button. I'm always open to suggestions of what you guys would like to see, or if you want to see more traditional gun reviews from me. If you're not sure what to say, you can leave the name of the gun below, but if nothing else, thank you guys for listening. I hope you learned a little something today, and I'll see you next Spacetime, Guardian. Take care, and happy hunting.